Welcome to an episode of Hollywood Matrimony's Martial Arts Movie Mondays. I'm your host, Bobby, and welcome. As you know, if you've never seen this show before, basically what we do is we take a deep dive into a martial arts film from my collection, old and new. We just kind of dive into it. As much information as I have in regard to it. I have a cat that's apparently visiting today. Just gonna walk right across like nothing's happening. Come on, keep it moving, keep it moving. Sorry. We like to keep it low budget around here. Go in there. I try to take a deep dive into the movie of things, information I may have known about the movie, whether this movie has sort of a personal attachment to my life. Really, I'm doing a show here. I've got a cat here. His name is Xander, and he doesn't get to come into this room very often, so now he thinks, oh, good. He's getting hair all over me. Come on, man. Come on. Just stay right there. All right. So anyway, for anybody who's wondering, if you've never seen this show, this is episode 4. Our previous episodes, we've talked about Accident Man with Scott Adkins. Last week, we did a full deep dive into Bruce Lee. And our first episode, what did we do our first episode? You'd think 4 episodes in, I would remember. I don't remember. Oh, we just did 47 blades. Or 14 blades, excuse me. So anyway, so each week I just pick a movie, and it's a movie that I own, that I have a physical copy of it. It's in my collection, and we will watch it. I'll talk about it, and we go from there. And I talk about some facts about the movie, review the movie, whatever. You may ask, what makes me an expert in martial arts movies? Nothing makes me an expert at anything, to be honest. But we do run a website called HollywoodMatrimony.com, where you can check out all of our reviews and news and interviews and giveaways and all kinds of fun stuff. Now, these reviews are only exclusive to this YouTube channel. I'm not posting them unless it's a brand new movie. On the martial arts side, I am a martial arts instructor. Outside of the website, that's what I do full time. I teach both Muay Thai and Taekwondo for the last 35 years. So I have a little insight to martial arts. So when I watch martial arts movies, it's really more about watching the fights, what they do right, what they do wrong, in my personal opinion, and what I see and what I don't see. And that's why I own so many different martial arts uniforms. And I like to wear it on this show because it's a martial arts show. Nothing else around me, obviously, is martial arts in this studio movie room, but I figured at least have something. So today, we're going to jump right in. I do want to touch base on part of our show last week. There has been kind of a big controversy that came out, not about our show, but about the subject matter that inspired last week's show, which is Mike Moe's portrayal of Bruce Lee in Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which was the reason we did the Bruce Lee show last week, was because I thought he did a great job playing Bruce Lee, bring that little snippet to life. Since then, Bruce Lee's daughter, Shannon Lee, Dan Insanto, who was in Game of Death and a close friend and student of Bruce Lee, I think one of the few people that are, I guess you want to say, certified to teach Jeet Kune Do via Bruce Lee, both came out and had expressed their satisfaction, if you will, of the portrayal of Bruce Lee. And I get it. I get what they were saying and the issues. I didn't feel that way, but I'm not a relative. I had a different view of it. I did want to say, in case anybody didn't see it, the actor that portrayed Bruce Lee, Mike Moe, hopefully I'm saying his name right, but he came out and talked about things. He heard the issue, the comments as well, and he decided to speak on his thing because he's the one that played it. And he did mention that it was a hard thing to initially play and to figure out how to approach and reading the script and the direction that we're going to go with it. And I've seen tons of interviews. There's a lot of people that say Quentin Tarantino is just bashing Bruce Lee. Everything I have ever seen or heard related to Quentin Tarantino and Bruce Lee was that Quentin Tarantino loved Bruce Lee, was a massive fan, and had nothing but respect and kindness for him. Obviously, they didn't know any about each other personally, to my knowledge, but he loved him in relation to film and what he stood for and whatnot. And Mike talked about in the interview that the whole mentality of the role was, one, being the 60s, Bruce Lee's fighting, being in cinema, being an Asian actor, being taken seriously and things like this. So he was a little cockier. And I'd always heard stories that Bruce Lee was very cocky and kind of had an attitude but it wasn't because he was a bad person, which I think is where the misconnection is. It was because he had to be. He was confident in his abilities and his skill, and he had to be at that time to be taken seriously, have kind of an attitude, and kind of not tolerate, racism and whatnot, which is even more evident today. And I think the catalyst, that movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, being a fairy tale of sorts, I think was telling that story, but in a different way. It was showing the cockiness of Bruce Lee, because if you watch that scene, the reality of it is Brad Pitt's character is the one that's kind of being rude and cocky. He's constantly questioning everything Bruce is saying. He's challenging him for everything. And there's stories of people that had come on set and challenged Bruce Lee. And I think he was basically using Bruce Lee not only as a homage to Bruce Lee, but he was also using Bruce Lee as the catalyst to show the capability of Brad Pitt's character, because as the catalyst for later in the film, when you see him do things, you understand, okay, this guy really is a badass. And nobody won that fight in the movie. It was a draw. And even Mike Moe, who played him, said, I'm pretty sure if that fight got finished, Bruce Lee would have won. I think that would have been the case as well. And I'm sure Quentin Tarantino would have had the case, but he stopped it. So it kind of came off as a draw, but not in a way that I thought was insulting. That's my personal opinion. I'm not Shannon Lee. I'm not Dan Santo. I train with him. I'm not related to him, obviously. So I get it. They're obviously welcome to their opinion and their beliefs, and I'm not trying to change that. I just wanted to touch base on that little bit of discussion of my personal feeling on the role, since we talked about Bruce Lee last week. Moving on. Today's film is a little different. It's not different, but it's a film from 1992, which I have a little more of a personal connection to it. I'm not in it or anything like that, but I have a personal connection to it in a bigger picture, which I'll talk about closer to the end of the show. But it is called American Samurai, starring David Bradley. Most people don't know who David Bradley is, unless you're a big-time nerdy martial arts fan like myself. David Bradley was, they did this film series called American Ninja, which most people know. What most people don't know is they made 5 of them. American Ninja 1 and 2 starred Michael Dudikoff, and in American Ninja 3, they brought in a new actor, David Bradley. He played a different character altogether. American Ninja 4, Michael Dudikoff came back. They had both David Bradley and Michael Dudikoff in the same movie, which was exciting and epic for everyone. And then they did American Ninja 5 with Bradley again, which we'll talk about that series at another time. So, ironically enough, director, I always say his name wrong, Sam Furstenberg. Is that right? I think that's right. Let me double check. Yeah, Sam Furstenberg directed this movie. Who he has some pretty cool credits. Like, I clearly was a huge fan of him as a director without even knowing it, because he did movies like Revenge of the Ninja with Sho Kosugi, Ninja 3: The Domination with Sho Kosugi, the American Ninja 1 and 2. So he also did Breaking 2 Electric Boogaloo, totally off the wall. He did a lot of other stuff, but those were just more of the martial art ones, and then Breaking 2 I just thought was funny. And fun fact, Jean-Claude Van Damme is in Breaking. Look for him if you don't know about that. Try to find him. He's very prominent. You'll see him. Anyway, so clearly, after making American Ninja 1 and 2, he was doing something different. I don't know if he was looking for another franchise, or if it was like, hey, we did an American Ninja, why don't we do an American Samurai? And who knows what would have been next? An American Karate Guy, American, I don't know. Anyway, so the movie itself is basically, it's kind of a revenge / tournament fight movie. The premise is a plane crashes with a baby in it. The parents die, the baby lives for whatever reason. And a Japanese man takes it in and raises him as his own son. And it just happens to be a samurai, go figure. So he's training him in the ways of the samurai and their family. And then he has a brother who is the actual son of the and of course he's jealous and doesn't look at him, and he betrays them and joins the Yakuza and leaves, and the other guy ends up getting this famous sword. So then we jump 5 years later, and for no rhyme or reason, he wakes up from a nightmare, which David Bradley obviously is the American son, and he wakes up from this nightmare, and so many people break into his house to steal the sword that he got from his father. adopted father. And then all the ensues. So they go on a mission. So the whole premise of the movie is him trying to figure out who had the sword. They find out about some kind of a murders happening. And because he's a samurai, he can tell the cuts. And he knows who it is just by the way they cut somebody. They also toy with the idea that there's like a different sense that you learn as a samurai that normal people do not have, and you learn that stuff. So it's typical 90s action schlock. It has all the tropes, all the cliched stuff that made these 90s movies so great, complete with the hero and the girl don't get along and they fight constantly, and then out of nowhere they suddenly like each other and they have sex. And what's funny about this movie, though, is this movie is a complete, total, blatant ripoff of Bloodsport. And when I say that, I'm not saying because it's that tournament fighting. It's almost the same story. Obviously, there's the addition of the samurai and the ninja or whatever you want to add to these people. But like literally, there's the tournament aspect. There's the guy being raised by the master that wasn't intentional. Like Bloodsport, he broke into his house or something to steal a sword or whatever he did. And this was somebody else is stealing a sword, but he was found as a baby and raised. He gets in this tournament. In the tournament, he has a friend of a guy that he saved in the movie in a bar fight, which is like a country, like a cowboy type guy who just happens to be there to fight in the same tournament, just like in Bloodsport, where Van Damme meets the American guy. They become friends, and of course, you can imagine what's going to happen to that person in the middle of the battle of the arena. And it's like you can see Bloodsport all over this movie, and I'm assuming it was probably a time where they were trying to capitalize on the popularity of Bloodsport because it did so well. I'll have to look and see if they came around. I'm sure they came around the same time, but it was clearly trying to capitalize on the fact that Bloodsport was a huge box office hit, and this one was a straight-to-video film. And but it is some of the funny stuff, or one of the big things about this movie that is so cool is this is the feature film debut of Mark Dacascos, which some of you may know him as his recent appearance in John Wick 3. I believe his name was Zero. He was in Only the Strong Capoeira film, which is one of my favorites that we'll obviously talk about here at some point. He was on the American version, I believe it is, of Iron Chef. He was like the host, chairman, I think that's what they call him, chairman on that show. He played the Crow in the TV series version of the James Omar Crow series. He's done a ton of martial arts flicks. But this was the first. This was the first one. Even says right here on the cover, David Bradley, American Samurai, introducing martial arts sensation Mark Dacascos. I'm not sure how you become a sensation before anybody knows who you are, but Mark Dacascos is a sensation in my mind to this day, and I love the guy. I think he's great. I love all of his films. I've been following ever since this movie, and I even found it interesting when I saw the movie the first time. I looked at the box. I'm like, introducing, who is this guy? That's one I got to watch. And David Bradley was the same way. When he showed up in American Samurai, I started watching all of David Bradley's movies. Then I started watching all of Mark Dacascos' movies. And I did the same thing once I discovered Scott Adkins. And that's kind of how I do with martial arts mostly. I find some character, some actor, martial arts actor, I tend to follow their career and I tend to follow them because I like seeing what they're doing. I love the movies. As bad as some of them are, I love them. This is one of those that's kind of a cheesy, cliched 90s martial arts flick. Let me tell you, 80s and the 90s were the best time for martial arts films. Sure, the 70s had a lot of the 70s, early 80s had a lot of the Shaw Brothers, great kung fu, chopsaki type flicks. Those are amazing. But through the 80s and the 90s, we got a lot of straight-to-video martial arts movies with David Bradley and Don the Dragon Wilson and Cynthia Rothrock and Chad McQueen and Mark Dacascos kind of came into the mix, and then you started hitting Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal and Chuck Norris's, and we had so many different people that were making so many just fun action martial arts flicks that I was in heaven. And I was watching to watch them for me. I wasn't watching obviously to review back then. It was just me. And I still watch them all the time. And a lot of them shaped my path as a martial artist. I started Taekwondo when I was 9 years old. 45 now. I know I look way older. I don't have a neck. I'm just noticing in this wearing this uniform. Anyway, I give my wife crap all the time. Get out of here, Kat. That she doesn't have a neck, and so today I don't have one. She can laugh. But I started Taekwondo when I was 9. I'm 45 now. And I watched these movies. I learned techniques from these movies and jump kicks and flips and things like this that I would mimic and I would practice and I would do stuff. And so these became not only entertainment for me, but these movies, even to this day, also became training videos for me to expound upon what I did in class and bring things to class. And I don't see a students of mine do that kind of stuff anymore. A lot of the people when I came, it wasn't just me. There was a lot of people in our class, and I think a lot of other martial artists that did that back then. They'd see something and they'd watch it and they'd get excitable and they'd try to mimic it or they try that kick. That was my life with these movies, and people don't seem to do it anymore. Let's see. There was something else I was thinking. The other thing is some of the funny stuff about this movie. This happened a lot in these kind of movies, where the mess ups in continuity or mistakes in the film or whatever you want to call it. There's one at the big climax fight. If you watch it really close, you'll see David Bradley's uniform change periodically. He's wearing like the samurai with the Hakuwara pants and the gi jacket similar to this one, and then it has the I'm going blank. I can't remember the name of it, but it has the kind of the they're not ropes, but like the material that's tied through the shoulders that helps hold the sleeves up or whatever behind the back. So it's like his top, I believe, is like either black or dark blue, and it's got like a white piece on it. So he'll be fighting and like he'll spin and you'll see the white tie in the back where it's tied up on the back of the shoulders and whatnot. And then he'll do another one and he doesn't have it. It happens like 3 or 4 times. Also, one of the things I love about these kind of movies, Bloodsport, Blood Fist, Shoot Fighter, The Quest, this movie, Best of the Best 2, it was always funny to see, or not funny, well, funny, yeah, funny's the right word, but to see the different fighters that would come in, because sometimes you get something like Bloodsport, where the fighters were all in gis and kung fu uniforms and whatever their uniform they'd wear in their class, which is what you kind of more expect. And then you get other ones like this one where they're coming out in themes. So you have, like in this one, you literally have a guy that's dressed like Conan the Barbarian. You have another guy that's like a big muscle guy and he's wearing like a one-piece like spandex, onesie kind of outfit, but he's carrying a big weapon, and it's also he can flex his muscles and whatnot. It's just so funny seeing that they come out these characters. And what's funny is also is in the arena battles, it shows a few of them. If you look really close, is you'll see some of the guys that died in a fight, because these are fights to the death in this one. You'll see the guys that died later in the film in the training room. So like we're watching a dialogue between David Bradley and somebody else, and in the background you can see one of the characters died and he's back there lifting weights, or he's back there doing his little kung fu moves or whatever it is. And it's just funny because I can imagine when they shot it, they either shot it early first, or because most movies are shot out of order, or when they're shooting it, they just needed to make sure to fill the room. And instead of bringing in different fighters, they said, just take it back there. Nobody will notice a gigantic barbarian man back there that died at first 20 minutes of the film. So if you check this movie out, watch this during the training sequences in the back when they're having dialogue. Just look in the background, and you'll spot at least 2 of the fighters that died at some point in the movie still there. So moving on. So the other thing is it's a fun movie. I enjoyed this movie. It even says on the back, it's Bloodsport with blades as 2 top martial arts masters draw swords, and that is completely accurate. David Bradley is this movie does predominantly focus on weapons, the sword play, some of the other characters, the barbarian with his big broadsword and the other guy with his spears and whatever, and knives. But David Bradley has always been just a really awesome kicker, and so he does get into some cool fight scenes where he's kicking people and doing some actual good martial arts fighting. Mark Dacascos does as well, but he's more straightforward samurai mostly in this movie, so you don't get a lot of what we've seen from Mark Dacascos since. But What's funny is this movie also has kind of an important journey from 1992 when I saw it for the first time, all the way up to today. There was a video store I used to go to. Story of the day. There was a video store when I was a kid. I say kid. I was in high school, and they had two locations, not simultaneously, but they had moved from one to another. And at this point now, I don't remember which direction it went, but one of the locations was by my house. And before I was able to drive, up until I started driving, they were there. I used to remember during the summer, almost every day, I would walk to the video store, which was about a good 30-minute walk, and on a kind of in a major traffic area. And I would walk to the video store. I'd go and I'd rent a lot of different stuff, but I always came out of there with at least one karate movie, and then whatever comedy or whatever movie came out probably that week. And then I'd go next door to Soul Man's Barbecue that they had, which they've since closed down and moved further down the same street. But I'd go in there and get my belly buster sandwich, which is like a 2-minute sandwich, and since you don't care about the food, but it was a routine. I had the same routine every time. But so the routine went on sometimes every day of the week. I didn't get to go to Soul Man's every day because barbecue is kind of expensive, and we didn't grow up with a lot of money. We didn't have Blakey Manor like we have now. But I always had money to get me a video because they were a few dollars, and my mom would always give me some money until I had my own money on it. But I would go to the video store almost every day. Sometimes maybe every day, but 90% of the time, almost every day, because I had to return stuff the next day before midnight. But then I would rent something else because if I'm here, why not do something else? So anyway, I went so often that the guy that owned the store knew me personally. We would chat. He'd ask me questions about martial arts movies, and I was already in Taekwondo, obviously. I was probably already a black belt by that point. If I wasn't a black belt yet, I would just got my black belt because I got my first degree black belt when I was like 16, 17. So 92 was around that same time because I graduated in 92 from high school. I'm that old. So in the midst of 90 to 92, that was the time period that I kind of ended up, getting my black belt. I was kind of coming off the tail end of kickboxing and my tournament fighting and some mild MMA fighting and things like that I was doing. And so we would talk about martial arts because apparently he was a martial artist at some point. I can vaguely remember. I don't know what he did or if he was black belt, but they got us talking. So every time I'd come in there, we'd talk. My dad would go up there sometimes. He would talk to my dad about it too. And so anyway, one day I came in the store. I was renting all my normal stuff, and he's like, "Hey, Bobby, I know you're big into all these martial arts movies. You're here all the time. You're a great customer, blah, blah, blah." He goes, and I don't know if this worked all the time, but this is how it actually worked at video stores. But this is what he told me. And again, I don't know if he told me this just because he was being a nice guy or if this is how it actually worked. But he told me, he goes, "Hey, I get these screening copies of movies that they send me to watch so I can determine how many copies to order of the VHS tapes." Yes, it was VHS time. There was no DVD yet. And he goes, "I can't watch all of them. So would you be interested in starting to watch all the martial arts ones I get and then tell me if it's good or bad, or if do you think people will want to see it?" And he goes, "You'll get them for free. You just come in, I'll give you the one, you watch it, you bring it back." So he can watch it at some point. I'm like, hell yeah. So the first one I ever got one from him was American Samurai. He gave me this one to watch, VHS. I remember, again, looking at it, I'm like, who's this Mark Dacascos guy? I look at it and go, I remember watching it going, yes, you should order this one. He's awesome. And order anything with Mark Dacascos. This guy's going to be awesome. I didn't see him again for a while, so I thought I was completely wrong. So that kind of, in theory, this movie right here, I don't even think I've ever told Mrs. Blakey this. Zander, would you keep with it? I don't even think I told the missus this, so I may have to bring it up on our next show together. If she doesn't watch this, she should. It's our channel. Anyway, this movie essentially kind of kicked my path of reviewing movies on, which obviously this is where we're at now, between this movie and our website and whatnot. So this is more than just another fun martial arts movie. Because of that one guy at the video store let me take this home to watch it, it became my unexpected path to where we are today. And again, it still holds a special place in my heart that I love. And yeah, so I don't know how hard this movie is to find. Put out by Canon, which is obviously not around anymore. Maybe I'm hoping Shout Factory will release something like this, because they release a lot of the Canon films. I've actually put into asking them to release Jim Cotta with my collection. That's going to become my new thing, by the way. Every show I pop Jim Cotta up, which we will talk about this eventually on the show. But hopefully if we haven't already seen, they may have released it already, but if we haven't already seen release of American Samurai, but I believe it was also put out, Warner Video. Yeah, I think Warner Video also put it out. So it might be one that you can find online. I'm sure you can find it on Amazon, some old people stuff. But American Samurai, first movie of Mark Dacascos. If you're a fan, it's a fun little movie. I loved it. I love rewatching it and reacclimating, because every time I do this show, I rewatch these old movies one more time. And that's really the reason this show exists. It gives me a reason to watch some of these movies that I haven't got to sit down and take time to watch in a while. So this week, American Samurai, David Bradley. We're going to take a deep dive into David Bradley's world of American Ninja at some point, and introducing Mark Dacascos, who you can check out in John Wick 3, that's coming out on Blu-ray and DVD soon. So that's about it for today. Don't forget, on our show, our Facebook Live show and Hollywood Matrimony Live show on this channel right here. Not yesterday's show, but last week's show. At the end of the show, I told a story that I called the Chuck Norris debacle. And if you go back and you look at that, you can look for a chance to how you can win this 3-pack of Chuck Norris. It's Delta Force Mission Impossible. Delta Force Missing in Action 1 and 2. If you want to win this copy of this, go back and look at it. It'll tell you how to win it, but you're going to have to watch that show, at least the end of it. And make sure you subscribe to the channel. So thanks everybody for watching again. Don't forget, check out our page at HollywoodMatrimony.com for all your news, reviews, and movies. You can find us on the Twitter at Hollywood Matter, on Instagram, on Facebook. Facebook, we do our Hollywood Matrimony live show simulcast on Facebook Live, as well as right here on this YouTube channel. You can check us out tomorrow for Hollywood Matrimony's TV Tuesdays, where me and the missus take a dive into television shows, old and new, whatever we want to talk about for that week. And then I'll be back on Thursday for the weekly update of all the trailers and Blu-ray releases and things that have happened throughout the week. And at some point, I'll pop in with our new little special of What's on My Desk, typically hint at Star Wars. And finally, right back here on Sunday for Hollywood Matrimony Live at 7 p.m. on Central Time, where we'll talk about big movies that came out that week, Blu-rays, DVDs, Netflix, whatever we talked about. And this week we'll be talking about Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, The Kitchen, possibly Dora and the Lost City of Gold, and whatever else we can find for that week. So be sure to make sure you hit that subscribe button right below here. If you're watching this later, there'll be a subscribe button up here in this little logo. And you can also check out various reviews, trailers, and our shows up here. And join me back here next week for an all-new episode of Hollywood Matrimony's Martial Arts Movie Mondays. Remember, keep your hands up and have a wonderful day.